Welcome in. It is Pro Football Today for another Sunday with you on SportsGrid. Kevin Walsh, Donnie Rightside, and Joe Lisi here as we get set for the Sunday slate, week number 9. We did see a big game kick the week off with the Jets grabbing, if there is going to be an important win for them, that was it against the Houston Texans. All the key players finding the end zone. Davante Adams gets in there, Garrett Wilson a few times, Joe, and they beat a Texans team that is, look, yes, banged up, but certainly a quality opponent.
Yeah, that was a good win by the New York Jets offensively and defensively. Garrett Wilson with 2 amazing catches for touchdowns, and they stopped the bleeding, right? That was a team that had lost 5 straight. They needed something. It didn't start that way. A lot of mental mistakes, penalties, Donnie, that we saw play out in the first half. But in the second half, they cleaned it up. Defense made some plays, and Aaron Rodgers and those big play wide receivers got it done. That was a good win. I'm not ready to put the Jets here as an AFC contender. We'll see how it plays out, but it's a start to stop the bleeding for the past 5 weeks.
It was a win, and they were put up in, or set up, I should say, in a great spot. The Jets win that football game. The Texans coming in a little bit banged up. It's Thursday Night Football. You're on the road for a travel here, so I thought they would win. But also, Joe, to your point, you know, you didn't get great Aaron Rodgers to start, but you got good Aaron Rodgers in the second half. Yeah. What do we like about the New York Jets? There's a lot of playmakers. Just get the playmakers the football. You saw in the second half, Garrett Wilson making great plays here. That unbelievable catch in the back of the end zone. How about the other one? Yeah. Jets overlooked a one-handed stab over the middle, jukes a guy at the goal line, and scores. And how did they salt that game away? Davante Adams on a 3rd and 8 deep shot for a touchdown. I liked what I see out of the Jets. I just don't like the rest of the year for the Jets.
Yeah, I think it's one of those situations where they were able to grab a win in a good spot. Let's not forget, we see upsets from good teams all the time, right? So, every single team has a win so far within this NFL season. If I'm not mistaken, Carolina is the only team that doesn't have multiple wins within this season. The Jets have a lot of winnable games. They've also already had a lot of winnable games that they've let slip by. I don't think there's any room for overreaction, not within an AFC race that has got a lot of teams that maybe aren't as good, at least on paper, as the New York Jets, but record-wise have created that distance. A team like the Pittsburgh Steelers is one, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be battling for the AFC North alongside a Baltimore Ravens team, Joe, that we've seen drop a lot of games via the upset. They made a move this week for Deontay Johnson, though, from the Carolina Panthers. How do you feel about that addition for the Ravens?
I think it's a great addition, more depth for the wide receiver room. We saw Zay Flowers step up with a 100-yard performance, but he's still been inconsistent, and you needed playmakers outside of Derrick Henry, especially when the rushing attack gets shut down, right? You want to give Lamar Jackson multiple weapons. We've seen Isaiah Likely step up and Mark Andrews, but again, more consistency out of big play wide receivers on the outside to open up the rushing attack, Donnie, of Derrick Henry and, more importantly, Lamar Jackson in the RPO game can't hurt down the stretch.
I love the move, and here's why I love the move. The alpha dog doesn't get changed, which is a wide receiver that's going to say, I need the football, 7, 8, 9, 10 targets a game, or I'm upset. You know the alpha dog on this team is? It's the running game. It's Lamar Jackson running. It's Derrick Henry running here. Yes, you add another wide receiver who's slippery out there that can make big plays, and also, Lamar Jackson makes so many plays in the pocket to extend plays. You have a guy that fast that can get in and out of his breaks. I love the move. It doesn't upset the apple cart. Terrible loss last week. Good improvement in your wide receiving core now.
If you're the Ravens, again, it's just talent acquisition, right? I mean, it's going to be an arms race there. We saw Kansas City make the move for Hopkins. Buffalo make the move for Amari Cooper. You want to keep pace here. And certainly it's not like it's a wide receiver room that couldn't use a little bit of juice. We are approaching the trade deadline, though. So for today, there could be a few results that solidify a team's needs, and they're going to be aggressive. Perhaps it puts a team up against it where they say, you know what, maybe we're better off selling here, and this isn't going to be our season. One game, though, where both teams are looking to not just win today, win a division, win a conference, maybe win a Super Bowl. 6-2 Green Bay hosts 6-1 Detroit. It is our game of the day. And you have to wonder, Lisi, if the importance of this one is why we're going to see Jordan Love take the field. A little surprised that that's the case, considering the initial reactions to his injury that he sustained in still a win against the Jaguars.
You have 2 hot football teams, Kev. You have Detroit, that's won 5 straight. They've won those games by an average margin of victory of 19.4 points per game. On the flip side, you have Green Bay, that's won 4 straight by 7.7 points per game, got the victory in Jacksonville. But again, Jordan Love is banged up. The question and the concern that I have in terms of him playing in this game is he better be 100% healthy because we've seen multiple injuries now. He injures his ankle, and then maybe he came back a little too soon. The groin injury now pops up. If you rush him back and he now has a season-ending injury, your season's completely finished, even though Malik Willis has stepped up in terms of backup duty. You cannot rely on Malik Willis. You need to make sure Jordan Love is 100% healthy. I think the rushing attack will take over in this matchup with Josh Jacobs to take the pressure off of Jordan Love, but that is a huge concern for me for Green Bay moving forward.
Battle of the ground games today for me in this one. He said, whoa, what do you mean? Like, look at Goff. He's put up sensational numbers touchdown-wise. You take a look at Love, he can certainly air it out. There's a reason why we take a look at this total. It opened up at 50.5 and now sits at 47.5. It's not because of the injury to Love. Rain in the forecast. Precipitation 60 to 70% today, 50 degrees, but also sustained winds of 15 miles an hour or higher, which plays right into this because I think we're all in agreement. You're not going anywhere at the Green Bay Packers unless Jordan Love is healthy. Do you know when they usually hold skill position guys out? On a wet, rainy turf, or grass as opposed to turf. That's what you're getting today because it's not about, well, he's not going to run that much. Do you ever drop back in the pocket, 5-step drop, and all you have is that little quarter-inch slip from your front foot to the back foot? There goes that groin again. I'm worried about Jordan Love in those type of conditions today. It's going to be Detroit for me, but just a little thing to take a look at to see if that rain actually holds up today, guys. It's
interesting because you're right. We know the best version of Green Bay is with Jordan Love, but they look, and it's a big reason LaFleur's in heavy consideration for Coach of the Year. They've been able to win with Malik Willis. If Love set out here, they're on bye. He may only have to miss a game, right, in order for him to be ready for Chicago. If he misses 2 games, that's a month off for Jordan Love, which would have been really nice. But again, I understand it's tough here. It feels as if the division is on the line. A lot of interesting games on this slate. One that also involves the NFC North is going to feature the Sunday nighter with the Minnesota Vikings going up against the Indianapolis Colts and Joe Flacco, as opposed to Anthony Richardson. It's been a conversation here for the crew on the desk about why the Indianapolis Colts made this move. Is this the best move for the Indianapolis Colts? Short-term, long-term? And I'll tell you, man, hearing the Quentin Nelson comments, he didn't sound like somebody that was excited about the decision that was made by the Indianapolis Colts organization. He didn't sound like somebody who felt that they needed a quarterback change for the best of this. He sounds like someone who believes in Anthony Richardson and was blindsided by this move. And that is something that is starting to really jump off the page. And we'll talk about this more in our show here today, Donnie. But it really feels like a group of players blindsided by the Colts' decision to bench Anthony Richardson.
Well, then I'm going to be completely out on the Colts. If you're blindsided about a quarterback playing horribly, getting replaced here, I don't know what to tell you. Now, for the future of the Colts, would it be great if Anthony Richardson steps back in and plays well? Yes, but this is a win-now league. If you feel your lead, or should I say, your game is slipping away. And by the way, did you notice what happened on Thursday night? The Texans lost. Now, even more imperative, win football games, you might win this division. So for me, I'm not upset about it, but can you get a quick change back over in a game or two? Yes. If he's terrible, talking about Joe Flacco against Minnesota today, could he get replaced? Absolutely. But for me, forget about the offensive lineman. If I'm a wide receiver, I can't play with Anthony Richardson. You'll lose the entire wide receiver room. Instead, Joe Flacco throwing bombs deep to everybody. It's a party.
Right. I mean, Joe Flacco does give the offense, I believe, more of an ability to stretch that defense over the top in regards to the passing attack. You take the high highs and the low lows with AR, but you can't do 10 of 31 completion percentage and expect to win games consistently in the NFL. We'll see. Long term, I still think he is the face of the franchise, but the coaching staff and whoever made that decision to go with Flacco, we'll see how it plays out tonight.
And we're going to watch how a lot of these games play out. Dallas could use a win in Atlanta. Buffalo trying to bury the Miami Dolphins one final time, and so many other great games. But again, best game on the board, it's Green Bay, it's Detroit. It's next here on SportsGrid.
he will be 2-7 against top 5 opponents in his 6 full seasons with the Buckeyes. Now you're going to take on the road, one of the best rush defenses in the country in Penn State. You're already having trouble rushing the ball. So what does that mean, Ben? That means Ohio State is going to have to rely on Will Howard to throw the ball on the road.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Back with you here on Pro Football Today. The Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers go head-to-head. A fascinating matchup here with a Detroit Lions team that is red hot. Winners of 5 in a row, and many believe are not just the best team in the conference, but maybe the best team in the National Football League. The Packers, on the other hand, are hot as well. A 6-2 group this season who have been able to win with and without Jordan Love. Winners of 4 straight at home are an underdog to these Lions, which begs the question, I think, off the bat. How much of this line, Joe, is a result of the Jordan Love health status here? Because, again, Green Bay at home, supposed to be one of the better teams catching points.
Yeah, they are. It was 3.5 early in the week. We see it under a key number of 2.5, and that's the line movement, I think, because of Jordan Love. But again, you have the more consistent team in Detroit that had just pounded teams, not just at home, Kev. They pounded them on the road as well. They went to Dallas and won that game by 38. Like I mentioned, 19 points per game. They're undefeated on the road. So I think, the 2.5, 3-point number is fitting. But I still think Green Bay is alive, even if Jordan Love is not 100% healthy in this matchup. We saw Josh Jacobs pound the rock for over 100 yards last week, 2 touchdowns. I think the offensive line is playing well, and I believe in Green Bay's defense. They've been opportunistic in recent weeks. I think they could force some turnovers. They're going to have to do it because Jared Goff, even though it's a wet track, has been phenomenal. Last 5 games, he's completed over 72% completion percentage, only like 20 incompletions over the last 4 weeks, Donnie. He's playing lights out, MVP level, but I still give the edge at home to Green Bay.
I do have Detroit going to the Super Bowl, and should they make the Super Bowl, where is it this year, guys? That's in New Orleans. That's a dome. So it's a perfect scenario. It's what they like to. The reason I bring up the dome is because they haven't played outside yet this year. And you're going to go into Green Bay, 50 degrees, windy, and also some rain in the forecast. That changes things up. You use that fast track inside. Most of these domes certainly have turf going in there. You're not going to have that today, which means leaning on that ground game, Montgomery and Gibbs out of the backfield. If it's colder, you're going to be dumping it down as opposed to taking deep shots there. No Jamison Williams still suspended at this point. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he should be fine. But I'm just trusting my gut here because you look at those last 4 games, Joe, 42, 47, 31, and 52. That offense is a machine. I've been calling it all year. Pound for pound, the best offense by far in the NFL. And if you have the best offensive line in football, which Detroit does, you should be able to win games outdoors when it's raining and in windy conditions.
Yeah, I think the fascinating thing, though, again, is what percentage of this line is how good Detroit is viewed and what percentage of it is the Jordan Love injuries. Because, look, the way the Green Bay Packers are perceived by so many people, a home dog should be labeled disrespect, realistically, right? I've been told consistently that they are just underneath this Detroit Lions team. We know home field advantages. Again, you talk about it, Donnie, right, where Goff's outside today. Maybe we can give him a pass, because that is a worry when it comes to the Detroit Lions offense outside of dome conditions there. So that, to me, makes this tricky. Are we betting into a game with a quarterback that doesn't have his full arsenal of within him own self? There are angles you could take, I think, on Romeo Doubs props or Jaden Reed props that would all make sense here. To me, going through this game, especially with some tough weather conditions potentially on board, I find David Montgomery to be the safest option and the best bet. Monty is in a very simple and obvious bounce-back spot here, having less than 40 yards in each of the last 2 games, though those were oddities, right? Injured against Minnesota, and then the route that was that matchup with the Tennessee Titans. But we've seen David Montgomery in Detroit consistently get consistent work, and I don't fully buy into this Packers defense, especially against the run. I think you guys know this. I think Gibbs is significantly better than Montgomery, but it doesn't stop them from using those guys, certainly from the rushing play angle, the exact same, if not leaning towards Montgomery. I think you're going to see him have a really big game here against the Packers. I played him over his rushing total.
Yeah, and he's a tougher inside runner, I believe, than Jahmyr Gibbs. Not to take away from Gibbs' ability, but when Gibbs catches the edge, he's gone. He's a home run hitter. Montgomery does the dirty work between the tackles. And in terms of this type of matchup where there is a wet track, you want to sustain drives and keep the opposing offense on the sidelines. And that's where David Montgomery is a huge asset. Let's not forget, played in Chicago, played at Iowa State. He's used to these type of conditions in this matchup. And again, you're right. I mean, Jacksonville put up 27 points through the air, on the ground with Tank Bigsby. They got going with the rushing attack in the second half of the matchup. I will say, when I look at this game, I think the bigger back in this matchup for me is Josh Jacobs, because, again, you look at the last 2 weeks for Detroit, even though they dominated over 140 yards in back-to-back games, granted it was in garbage time maybe, Tennessee and Minnesota. If I'm Green Bay, I want to pound the rock, stay in manageable situations, and then work off a play action with Jordan Love, because I don't want him back there, 3rd and long, pinning their ears back and taking sustained hits today.
This is what you got him for, Josh Jacobs, and he's been phenomenal. You look at the 2 big money guys like Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs, how would they fare into their new teams? They've been absolutely fantastic on both sides, and if it is rainy forecast and you are playing a division rival, these are the games that you would like, Joe. 20 to 25 carries, get into that lather, as we like to say. But also, let's take a big picture on this game. Before we go into the game, the number 1 overall seed, it's the Detroit Lions in the NFC, which is huge. So if they can go into Green Bay and pick up a victory, that's massive. But if Green Bay does win this football game, they catapult them, and they'll be the lead dog in the NFC. Now, also, the trade deadline is coming up Tuesday. So I asked both of you guys. I'll start with you, Joe. If Detroit loses, does that spur we need help here because we think we're that close? Or is it one of those things that Detroit wins, they go, love our locker room, don't need to make any change?
No, I don't think they make a huge change to the locker room. I think they won 5 straight. I mean, there's going to be roadblocks in the game and in the season, right? I mean, they're not going to go 17-0, but from a continuity perspective, I don't think they really have a weakness offensively. Jameson Williams is out of that lineup for a couple weeks. When he comes back, he's the home run hitter. We've seen St. Brown be hot or cold, and Laporta, one of the best tight ends in the NFC.
If you're telling me that the Lions win today means that they don't make moves, then that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make as someone not invested in Detroit. I do not believe in this defense still, and they lost Aiden Hutchinson. If this team does not add an edge rusher, it will come back to bite them. It will.
Darius Smith, him up.
Jadeveon Clowney, I don't care. I mean, listen, I know people go out there like to trade the farm scenarios for Myles Garrett.
Yeah, you saw that,
are probably not going to happen. But I mean, but by the way, if it did, I mean, listen, there's nothing else to say. Then they also found a way to get Myles Garrett again. Almost 100% not going to happen. But those are the type of franchise type of changing moves. I think the Lions should stay aggressive. Let's talk about another franchise changer. The Colts are on deck.
He will be 2-7 against top 5 opponents in his 6 full seasons with the Buckeyes. Now you're going to take on the road, one of the best rush defenses in the country in Penn State. You're already having trouble rushing the ball. So what does that mean, Ben? That means Ohio State is going to have to rely on Will Howard to throw the ball on the road.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Back to right here. It's Pro Football Today. It's Kevin Walsh, Donnie Rightside, and Joe Lisi. And we have ourselves a fascinating situation on Sunday night. I'll tell you, quite frankly, if it was not for the Anthony Richardson-Joe Flacco swap, I would have buried this game in the party over segment. As someone going to Eagles-Jaguars today, I was none too pleased to see my game flexed at a Sunday night football for Colts-Vikings. But Minnesota has levels of intrigue, no doubt. What we get from Joe Flacco today is going to be a major talking point. Good, bad, solid, no matter what, it's going to, for many people, be this referendum. But I think, again, it's important to pull back on what is still, to me, one of the more stunning decisions in recent memory. Because we saw an opposite move made a few years back by the Miami Dolphins when they were playing well with Ryan Fitzpatrick. And they said, it doesn't matter. Tua is the franchise. Get him in. Nope, nothing else matters. The Colts, again, have kind of flipped this on their head. They see the playoffs in their mind within reach, and clearly in that, someone within that organization believes Flacco gives them the best chance to win today, and perhaps they have then put what's supposed to be future of their franchise on the back burner. Anthony Richardson was the 5th overall draft choice just a year ago. He has started 10 NFL games. He's left a handful injured. So this is a guy who I think has played 7 full games within the NFL. Call it 6 if you want to count the game where he popped his head and left for a snap, quite frankly. It is incredible to me still for a team to make this type of decision with the Indianapolis Colts. And I think now we'll spend a lot of the year wondering, when does Anthony Richardson get back out there? But we'll take it from the top. Donnie, your thoughts as we sit here and have had even more time to digest the decision that was made to put Joe Flacco in for Anthony Richardson.
It's the right move. If you feel the time is now where you think you can make a playoff run, you have to put this guy in, and that's Joe Flacco. He's shown over the past year and a half that he can resuscitate a team that's struggling at quarterback, step in, and basically be an old man at sea and still be able to complete the deep ball to keep everybody involved. When you're running Shane Steichen's offense, it's apparent. The guy's very creative. He's running a simple system that says just play point guard at quarterback. You want to throw deep? We got guys running deep. You want to throw intermediate? I got a great running back in the backfield. Let's utilize everything. Everything wasn't being utilized here. And I think last week, the tap out, I think we make a little bit too big on that because it is going to get the national highlights. How could a quarterback ever do that at this point? And maybe if he thought twice, but you know what? Probably should have went back to the huddle and said, call run play here at this point, or let's just call something simple so I can just throw it out here and let a wide receiver screen go off. But so many things are happening behind the scenes that we aren't privy to at this point because you're right, Kevin. You're not going to take the top 3 pick a year ago that you're trying to evaluate in a playoff race and say he just can't play. I just think there's bigger pictures. Like Zeke Elliott gets suspended today. Oh, I wonder why he was. Well, news comes out. Guy's not showing up to meetings. He's being, a little bit extra, to say the least, here during the week. Stop the man this year. We don't know if that's happening with Anthony Richardson, but I'll tell you one thing. You'll continue to hear these stories if Joe Flacco goes on the road today and beats Minnesota, and they'll say, you know what, hey, maybe a couple more weeks on the bench. But if Joe Flacco gets pounded, sacked 6 times in this game, and they lose, you'll be calling for Anthony Richardson to be back in there, and rightfully so.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think the biggest reason for the change was the completion percentage. Again, we talked about it, and something that he struggled with, Kev, coming out of Florida, right? He was a physical phenom. We knew he could throw the ball a ton. He can run like the wind. He's big. He's physical. Has all of those attributes. But they wanted to cultivate that talent to the next level, and he's shown glimpses. I will say this: I am not putting Anthony Richardson on the same level as Bryce Young right now. I don't think it's a similar situation. I think Bryce Young, from what I've seen in regards to his play up until this point, not the same player that we saw at Alabama. Something's missing there, and the pocket presence, the ability to just understand the offense up until this point, completely different than Anthony Richardson. I think Anthony Richardson needs a little bit of honing. However, that being said, to Donnie's point, they are trying to challenge, as a wild card and potentially make the playoffs. They were on the cusp of that with Gardner Minshew last year in a backup role, and the ability for Anthony Richardson to maybe take 2 or 3 weeks off to see what he's doing wrong and maybe get a better understanding of the offense or maybe work on completions and his accuracy, I don't think it's a bad look for the franchise.
By the way, real quick on this, Kevin.
Yeah.
Like, real simple. Anthony Richardson, does he start again this season? Me? Yes.
Yes, I think he does.
But I then still don't understand how this happens. And look, you guys can find the video very easily of Quentin Nelson. He looks and sounds Notre Dame, baby.
Stop. That's why we don't listen.
Shell-shocked.
We don't listen.
Donnie, he sounds shell-shocked by this move.
Okay.
And all I know is, certainly this desk and many others have been yeah, man, Irsay's lost his mind. That is just the way this situation feels to me. What does it mean for tonight's game? We'll break that down next on SportsGrid.
He will be 2-7 against top 5 opponents in his 6 full seasons with the Buckeyes. Now you're going to take on the road, one of the best rush defenses in the country in Penn State. You're already having trouble rushing the ball. So what does that mean, Ben? That means Ohio State is going to have to rely on Will Howard to throw the ball on the road.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Back with you on Pro Football today, Kevin Walsh, Donnie Rightside, and Joe Lisi. And we are going to grab that kind of Nelson clip. Maybe people can tell me I'm losing my mind here, though this will send the segment off the rails the second you tell me I'm losing my mind here. Let's make sure we talk about the game, because these are two teams that I am selling. Earlier this week on Game Time Decisions, we went through some updated win totals, and I played both of these teams under their current number. Vikings at 10.5 at plus 130, and the Colts at 8.5 at minus 142. I don't particularly love where either team sits, and I certainly don't like their upcoming schedule for the rest of the season here, Joe. How do you see this game playing out between Minnesota and Indianapolis?
Well, from the spread perspective, I lean to the Colts with Flacco catching the 5.5. The reason why I say that is because, again, I still believe in them having a little bit more consistency than Minnesota right now. I mean, the one thing that Minnesota was dominant in when they did start 5-0 was that their defense was rock solid. They had the second-best rush defense in all of the NFL, and you look now in back-to-back games, granted one of them was Detroit, but they've given up 30 points per game. This offense now with Sam Darnold has shown halves of consistent football, but now it started with the Jet game. They dominated the first half. Second half, they looked inconsistent. Darnold missing throws. He can't hit J.J. Instead of scoring touchdowns, Donnie, they're settling for field goals. They did it yet again in the Thursday night game against L.A., which cost them the victory. I can't buy in until I see this game play out. Early on, I'm taking the Colts. I do lean to the under because, again, I just don't believe in that offense of Minnesota right now. Even though J.J.'s putting up numbers, give me the Colts in the under.
I actually think this is the perfect time to put Joe Flacco in, because if you look at Minnesota, a little bit leaky on the back end, where Joe Flacco's got that arm to get it downfield. You finally got healthy wide receivers who look like they're going to be healthy, at least for the season, Pittman, Downs, and Pierce. But bigger than that, the play-action pass will work. Brian Flores is a great defensive coordinator. I honestly think you probably put Anthony Richardson in an absolute pretzel today. I don't think you can do that with Joe Flacco, so the whole field is open. I'm taking the points. Am I saying that Indy should be able to go in there and get a victory? No. But I don't think that we're going to head into the fourth quarter where this is any more than a one-possession game. I'll take it.
I just want to say, last time they were there was 33-0 first three.
Oh, is that the game? Wow.
Kirk Cousins came back, so just that's
we're on the fireside.
Yeah, we watched that game Saturday.
Shout it out.
Oh, I had a Jonathan Taylor receiving prop in that game, like 18.5. He caught like an 18-yard grab on the first play and got injured on the play, and I lost the bet. I think actually that's back when they were still doing refunds when star players got hurt now. So there's a lot of interesting things within this football game, but one thing that jumped off the page for me was, if you look at Flacco, one of the selling points, I think, for Indy is he's played clean football. 7 touchdowns to 1 interception. And I thought to myself, man, I wonder what Flacco is to throw a pick. And he was around minus 130, minus 135. The Vikings have done a really nice job picking quarterbacks off this season. And then I look back at what he did with the Browns last year, right? Because everybody's probably like, man, this is the same. He threw a pick in every single game that he started for the Cleveland Browns last season. I'm playing Flacco to throw a pick. I think it is that simple.
Oh, he's throwing it today, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? I think it is one of those. I know that's for some people a little off the beaten path, but Flacco throwing an interception at minus 135 when sometimes we see those quarterbacks, those guns. I mean, remember Jameis Winston with last week, minus 200 to throw an interception?
It should have happened.
Oh, boy, oh, boy.
They should have lost, yeah.
Kyle Hamilton, I think, was on the drop there. Notre Dame.
Eddie Jackson, too.
No wonder he dropped.
It was, we're going to hear from a Notre Dame alum in a second here, but I do think Flacco to throw an interception is a very, very legitimate look within this football game. I am fascinated to see how the wide receiver room plays out. Josh Downs has clearly been Flacco's number one when he's in the game, but Michael Pittman gets enough work. They've just not had any type of rhythm so far, but it's reflected in the props market. Downs is about 10 or 12 yards higher than Pittman, and we know typically the idea, Joe, is that Michael Pittman is the number one wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts.
Yes, you have to get him the football in this matchup. I believe Pittman will go through his number today, and potentially he can get close to 100 yards in this matchup. We've seen receivers eat. Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp had great success on Thursday night against that secondary. And if they're not generating a pass rush, for the most part, there was only 1 or 2 times that Matt Stafford I saw under pressure in that ball game, especially in the second half. As long as he has a clean pocket, he could pick apart that secondary. So, again, and keep in mind as well, the Colts defense hasn't been all that bad last 3 weeks. They give up 23 to Houston. They basically contained them, forced them to work down the field 17-10 over the last 3 weeks. They're slow slowly coming into form. That's why I like the Colts with the points.
Yeah, I think the Colts will be able to stay close, and also bringing back, this is the perfect game if you're going to make a substitution at quarterback going up against Flores' defense. The entire field will be open. Just a matter of can Flacco be accurate. If he is, there's a legitimate chance they can knock off the Minnesota Vikings, who are reeling a little bit and need to get back on their feet.
Again, there is, though, to me, just some wonder of, how the locker room feels. Not that they wouldn't play for Flacco or anything like that. But I do believe this to be an odd situation here. And this is the Quentin Nelson video that I was talking about. James Boyd, who covers the Colts for The Athletic, was speaking with Nelson about how he's gone to bat for Anthony Richardson over his career. Here's Quentin Nelson's response.
Went to bat for the guy multiple times this year.
Yeah, and I still do. It's like a crazy situation, and still have a bunch of faith in AR and know that when he gets his next opportunity that he's going to do well. And I still think that there was a lot of things good he did when playing. He did a great job escaping pressure, evading sacks, and he also had some good throws too. Yeah.
Were you surprised by the decision at all?
Yeah, I was surprised.
Now, the reality is here on the desk, we couldn't hear the video,
I heard
right?
everything.
Yeah, now, what I will say, again, the kind of standout thing there is him just saying it's a crazy situation, he has a bunch of faith in AR, and went on to say, Donnie, I know that when he gets his next opportunity, he's going to do well, which speaks to kind of your wonder of, will Richardson get back out there? But how does Richardson get out there without Flacco failing? I don't see... I think one has to happen for the other to take place.
That is going to happen there, because it's not as if, say, look, we just wanted to cool him down. Flacco ripped off 3 in a row. Now we're leading the division and maybe get the number 1 overall seed in the AFC. Now it's time to go back to our quarterback, who still is basically in his rookie. I don't think that's going to be the case. Now, and I also don't think it's going to be, hey, well, we can fit this quarterback in, like I always tell you about the Cam Newtons of the world and the Justin Fields. Let's put him in a red zone action. No, he's either your starter or he's not your starter at this age, at this point. But I do think sooner or later, let's just say the slipper is going to break on Joe Flacco. He's not going to run off 10 straight victories and be dominant. He's been a really good guy that, if I need you in a couple spot starts to revive a team that's dead on offense, he can do that. I'm still worried about, can Joe Flacco at this age, Joe, be the centerpiece of that offense, stay healthy, and be dominant the rest of the way? I don't think so.
Yeah, well, think about what happened when he did start the playoff game against Houston, right? They got boat raced in that matchup. So, again, the slipper did fall off. They got to a certain point, and then they plateaued and capped out. Now, granted, that defense was not the same at the end of last season for Cleveland as well, but that was a huge part. He was, not the same quarterback up until that point in that game against C.J. Stroud. But he did throw for 300 in the loss to Jacksonville, right? He threw for over 300. That's what they're seeing. The offensive linemen always have the quarterback's back, right? They should, right? Especially in that matchup, backup, starter. And I understand that Nelson had said AR, he wishes him the best. He'll get another opportunity. I just believe that, and I look at it from the head coaching perspective, right? You have a head coach that took Jalen Hurts to the Super Bowl. If he, right? Jalen was a little inconsistent at that point. Either it's his call or up above, maybe the owner, upper management, somebody made the call, the GM, and said, hey, this change needs to be done. Give it a break for a couple of weeks and then regroup.
So Michael Pittman, let people know that he found out via social media. Mm-hmm. That's how he found out that the quarterback room was being changed. So again, Shane Steichen is now running a sloppy operation.
Which I doubt.
You doubt. You love him. So do I. So all I am saying is it should not be that hard for people to think that Jimmy Irsay stepped in and forced the decision that this ultimately Indianapolis Colts team isn't necessarily behind, because he feels that that's going to get them a chance to get to the playoffs. But what I want to know is if he goes out there and struggles against this Vikings defense, we've seen Stroud, Purdy give hell. Are we breaking down Richardson next week against the Buffalo Bills? Like, what does this look like here? Yeah. More NFC conversations with you after a quick break.
He will be 2-7 against top 5 opponents in his 6 full seasons with the Buckeyes. Now you're going to take on the road, one of the best rush defenses in the country in Penn State. You're already having trouble rushing the ball. So what does that mean, Ben? That means Ohio State is going to have to rely on Will Howard to throw the ball on the road.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Back with you here, Pro Football Today. Certainly and understandably spending a lot of time on the Colts side of that Sunday nighter, but the Minnesota Vikings portion of it is really important for the NFC race, right? Our game of the day today is Green Bay and Detroit. Everyone projecting those to be a pair of playoff teams. Can the NFC North put in 3, 4 teams? That is a legitimate question. And if you're the Dallas Cowboys, you're hoping the answer is no. You have to control quite a lot, and you have to be able to beat a team like the Falcons, who, via injury help, if I'm being honest, has found themselves back in control of the NFC South. This is a game that I feel like so many different seasons, we would expect Dallas to step up here, be favored, win, route, roll, high scoring, boom, boom, boom. But Dallas has continued to look lost against any team that is competent. I guess the question, Donnie, is how competent are the Atlanta Falcons?
I think competent enough to beat the Dallas Cowboys the way they're constructed today. Because what's really going to change? Like, I actually like Rico Dowdle today. I think he's going to be serviceable on the ground. Do I think he goes nuts? No. Is there a chance he gets a touchdown? Is there a chance he gets 15-plus carries? Absolutely. Because they're going to need to run the football if they want to stay in this game and just not be one-dimensional like we've seen the past couple weeks. But also, how are we building the Dallas Cowboys coming into this season? It was CeeDee Lamb. We knew that. He's a great wide receiver. He'll continue to be great. Dak Prescott putting up great regular season numbers, a decent offensive line, a couple wide receivers helping out. But it was really built on saying, what can this defense do? 2 ball hawks at cornerback, injured at times here, waiting for them to get their starting formula back. But also, pass rushing. They have 2 of the best pass rushers in the NFL, Joe, down for multiple weeks. It's apparent now. The Dallas Cowboys are terrible in defense. They can't get pressure, they can't stop the run, and they can't stop the pass. That's a recipe for getting blasted.
Yeah, it is. I actually like them with the points today. I think they do step up. We saw them last week, make it close in the fourth quarter. Entering that game, they were 3-0 on the road. Now they're 3-1. A much better road team even now heading into this week than they are, at home in Big D. The biggest thing, and I agree with Donnie, one of my better bets today is Rico Dowdle back in the lineup, 44.5. I think you have to run the football when your defense is inefficient and inconsistent. Your offense is your best weapon. Sustain drives, grind out a victory on the road, especially when you have the more consistent offense in Kirk Cousins that's putting up numbers. Keep them on the sidelines. Now, I will say, outside of Rico Dowdle, Jake Ferguson could be a factor. We saw Cade Otton have a huge performance against Atlanta's secondary last week. Jake Ferguson has a number, I think, around 46.5. Altered him up to 60-plus. Keep an eye out to short to intermediate throws. That's not to take away from CD. He'll eat, but the underneath throws to sustain drives, that's where Dallas, I think, wins this game. They gave up 223 on the ground to San Francisco. No defensive identity, and Mike Zimmer has no clue what he's doing from a defensive coordinator perspective, but I will take Dallas in this spot, guys.
Yeah, I think it's one of those situations where I made a couple stands with Dallas, but once I watched the Lions dump them on their head, I said, all right, listen, I got to back off here. Now, I'm not running to bet with Atlanta. You see this number's moving up to 3.5. That's not really my interest point here. But for the Cowboys, if this is going to fully flip around, right, and I think they could win this game, but if it's going to fully flip around, you have to get Micah Parsons back, right? You probably have to get DeRon Bland back at some point. And we got Trevon Diggs all of a sudden questionable today with a calf where even if he plays, that's something that can easily flare up. For me, I just think it's more comfortable to find some prop angles in this game, and I think the best belongs to Bijan Robinson, over 24.5 receiving yards, back-to-back games for him with 40-plus receiving. The Cowboys have been crushed by running backs in the receiving game, allowing over 38 yards per game to the position, and there's no worry about Algier cutting into that portion of the Bijan workload. I think Kyle Pitts has some room for a good day as well. CD probably finds the end zone. This is one of those parlay games. Yep. The SGP players will love to attack it and make sense with that total of 51.5. Now, another game that's going to be big for the NFC, and this one you could argue even bigger, Seahawks-Rams. Because one of these teams today will feel eliminated. And maybe not in reality, because every single team in the West has 4 losses, but in perception, I think today's loser, you will feel like, okay, let's just get them out of the way here. They are not legit. They are not to be taken serious enough here. And I know, Joe, that you have been waiting for this Rams team to break out. They got a huge win against the Vikings on Thursday night. You expect momentum to continue?
I do. Now, I will say this. The line is a little perplexing. They are 0-3 on the road. A lot of those 3 losses came without Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua in terms of both of those players being in that lineup. They got absolutely boat raced by Arizona, 41-10. They're running the football more consistently. Kyron Williams had 87, 88 yards, and we've just seen that offensive line now start to protect Matt Stafford. And, oh, by the way, that defense is starting to come around. I know it was Las Vegas, but they held them to 15 points. They did hold Minnesota in the second half. Field goals, red zone defense has been phenomenal. Jared Verse is coming on. I just like what they have from just a locker room perspective, McVay on the road. And on the flip side with Seattle, if they can't get Kenneth Walker and that rushing attack going, Donnie, I do not see them winning this game. Geno Smith's going to be hit early, often, and with DK banged up, it's going to be impossible, I believe, to win this matchup.
Yeah, 2 big wideouts banged up because we are talking about DK Metcalf who's not going to play in this game. The questionable aspect is going to be Puka Nacua and how healthy he's going to be. Came back like a wonderkind a week and a half ago, like, oh my goodness, for the rest of the way, this is what we're going to get. And then, of course, you see in practice he bangs knees with somebody, the knee swelling, so how effective he's going to be. But if it's anything like the previous game, we're like, well, he doesn't even practice. What are we going to get? He looked like a superstar wide receiver back out there. If that's the case, if we're getting that Puka Nacua, I think the Rams win this game. But I'm going to bet against Puka Nacua being 100%, which then reverts back to the Rams defense. How good is it? As you said, you're on the road at this point. It's a divisional game. It's not as if Seattle's laying 6.5 points. They basically just have to win this football game and get the cover. I think I'm going to side with Seattle in this one. This is a Geno Smith game. You need to show up, Geno Smith, in this game. Hey, what do you want me to do without DK Metcalf? Show up. That's what I want you to do.
Plus Price to throw 2 touchdowns. He's only done that once this season. I think it makes some sense there. I did play the Seahawks, though, catching the 1.5 here. I saw this line early week. I thought Geno got injured, and I didn't know about it, quite frankly. Maybe I'm late to the Rams here. Maybe I'm not giving Metcalf's importance to the offense enough love here. Very surprised by this number. Again, a simple home field advantage spot. And this is just one where Seattle, I know they've struggled with the absolute best teams in football and then the letdown spots of the Giants. Yeah. I don't think the Rams fit that description fully. I think they take care of business here. And that would shift LA down to 3-5. Cooper Kupp get back on the block again all of a sudden. I mean, I don't know. I still kind of can't figure out the way that all played out here. We'll put some odds in motion throughout this NFC conference. Where is some value for you heading into week number 9?
He will be 2-7 against top 5 opponents in his 6 full seasons with the Buckeyes. Now you're going to take on the road, one of the best rush defenses in the country in Penn State. You're already having trouble rushing the ball. So what does that mean, Ben? That means Ohio State is going to have to rely on Will Howard to throw the ball on the road.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, we're back to right here on SportsGrid. We've talked through a few key games within this NFC race, and I think it's important, especially through some of the games we've gone through in our opening hour here, to take a look at the conference as a whole. The Detroit Lions have positioned themselves as the favorites. They've made that move, and they were preseason not far behind. They were the second choice there, but we knew the Niners had this gap. The Niners, due to the fact that they were able to beat Dallas, have held as that second choice, even if I still disagree with it. But they opened the year as the favorite. So there has been move against San Francisco. A lot of the preseason teams that you were expecting to be there are still there. With the Cowboys dropping back a bit, the Vikings have crashed the party, and the huge mover is the Washington Commanders. A preseason 50-1 number has found itself trickling all the way down to a 12-1 price. When you look at the landscape of the NFC, Lisi, what is jumping out to you?
I don't know if I can comment.
No, go ahead.
The Eagles at 6.
Oh, no.
There you go. There you go.
Steal. And this is not a knock. I told you that last week.
I knew that win was dangerous.
You asked. Last week would have been the determining factor for me, not from an offensive perspective. We knew Jalen Hurts and that offense were starting to find continuity. It was the defense. I needed them to shut down an elite, high-powered offense. Even though T. Higgins wasn't there, that was an MVP caliber quarterback in Joe Burrow, and they did it again with Vic Fangio. 17 points. They're starting to come into form. That's exactly what I wanted to see. Saquon running the football consistently. Again, at 6-1, Kev. This is still, in my opinion, one of the top 3 teams in the NFC. I think they can win it, and it all depends on that defense. If they can play the way they have the rest of the regular season, they're going to be there. And that's no joke. I like Green Bay, too, though, at 7-1.
There's 3 teams for me that, and again, these change, right? Next week you could see something different. Injuries are going to change. I would say, Donnie, give me 3 teams right now in the NFC you actually believe can get to the Super Bowl. Detroit Lions, Philadelphia Eagles, and the Green Bay Packers. Yeah. And I leave the San Francisco 49ers out because I don't know on the horizon. Does McCaffrey come back and he's the MVP, the best player in football? Does somehow miraculously Ricky Pearsall, as a rookie, shows up as that top-end number 3 wide receiver, and they go out in the open market this week and say, you know what, trade deadline's coming up. Let's get another receiver in here to give up on Ayuk. I don't know that yet, but I'm just looking right now. And the Washington Commanders sit there 10-1 right now. You beat the Giants today, and you see what their record looks like. Oh, they beat the Giants. No. This is a rookie quarterback going on the road after an emotional win, and you're telling me he's going to be good today and wins? That would show me a ton, Joe, for the Commanders.
It would. I just want to throw out 2 lottery tickets, and I know they're long shots, but I bring it up because the division is deadlocked. The NFC West, if you're not buying into the San Francisco 49ers, the value of L.A. and Arizona at 32-1, I mean, we talk about Gannon being a coach that covers numbers. Now they're starting to win games. They grind out 2 wins against Miami and the Chargers, respectively. Love him or hate him, but Kyler Murray is starting to come into his own. Marvin Harrison with a big day, and that defense is bend but don't break. And again, I think the Rams are in that area as well. 32-1. You're not going to get better value midpoint of the season.
Yeah. So within Arizona today, because you actually have 5 teams at 32-1 presently: right. Tampa Bay, LA, Arizona, Seattle, and Chicago. Mm-hmm. And look, the Bucs situation, the injuries are there. The path is very likely going to be, can you win the NFC South? We understand that, right? Within the Chicago Bears situation, it could just be a scenario where, you know what, man, we really shouldn't have lost that Washington game, but you did, and it's hard to give up on like that. But I think their matchup with Arizona is it feels like an eliminator for me at least. But that then means the winner is going to have a legitimate shot. Going through, because I went through all the updated when we did the updated win totals earlier in the week. I went through every team. Arizona, if they get the win today, they have a legitimate shot to win that division, because I don't love the schedules for the Rams or Seahawks as much. I think the Cardinals actually shines on them. Sometimes that's just the benefit of that last place schedule, which is what they're going to be working with the Arizona Cardinals there. So I don't hate the shot, again, at 32-1. I'd rather a worse number and watch them win today against the Bears. Look, I'll just say with the Philadelphia Eagles, and remember, this is a preseason position. This is not about fandom, though, again, in a few hours it certainly will be. The Philadelphia Eagles have not lost a game with A.J. Brown. Simple as. And sometimes people are just determined on, well, what are the records? Well, if A.J. Brown never get injured, I don't know. The Philadelphia Eagles might be sitting here unbeaten again at 7-0. And you know what? They'd be Super Bowl favorites if that was the point there. It has taken people forever. Like, again, we joke, but all they had to do was go to Cincinnati and win by 20. And then people went, yeah, they've got a shot. Yeah, they got a whole lot more than a shot in Philadelphia. I'll tell you that right now. Let's talk some MVPs. Lamar, Josh Allen. That race is heating up.
He will be 2-7 against top 5 opponents in his 6 full seasons with the Buckeyes. Now you're going to take on the road, one of the best rush defenses in the country in Penn State. You're already having trouble rushing the ball. So what does that mean, Ben? That means Ohio State is going to have to rely on Will Howard to throw the ball on the road.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts, so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern